It started with silence. The kind that fills a room when trust has been shattered and love begins to rot beneath the surface. The Montecito mansion, once the symbol of Harry and Meghan's fairy tale freedom, now felt like a gilded cage built on secrets. And on this particular evening, that silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, deliberate, almost waiting for something to explode. What if everything Harry believed about his marriage was a lie? What if, behind every public smile, Meghan was hiding something darker, something that would destroy everything he'd sacrificed for her? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That's the question that rattled through his mind as he sat alone in their dimly lit living room, staring at the flickering shadows on the wall. 7 years of defiance, of turning his back on the monarchy, of choosing love over duty, all suddenly seemed meaningless. Because that night, the whispers he'd ignored had finally found a voice. For weeks, the rumors had been circling quietly, staff speaking in hushed tones, Meghan's unexplained absences, late-night drives with no explanation. Meetings, she called them. But meetings don't usually happen at midnight, do they? Especially not when you return home hours later. Perfume different, mood distant, smile forced. Even the security detail, the same men who had sworn loyalty to the couple, started exchanging nervous glances. They knew something Harry didn't. Or perhaps, they knew what he didn't want to believe. Imagine this for a moment. The man who once accused the British press of tearing apart his private life, now becoming the detective in his own marriage. He didn't want to be. He wanted to trust her. But love has a strange way of blinding you, until it doesn't. It began with something small. A second phone. Not Meghan's official one. Not the one her assistant managed. Not the one Harry occasionally borrowed when his was charging. This one was tucked away under a silk pillow in the guest bedroom, almost as if it wasn't meant to be found. Harry noticed it by accident. He'd gone in there looking for one of Archie's toys. And then he heard it, a faint buzz. A text. One that would change everything. He didn't touch it. Not immediately. His hands trembled, heart pounding, mind racing. He wanted to believe it was nothing. Maybe a friend's device. Maybe something left behind. But something inside him knew better. The wallpaper on the screen was unmistakable. Meghan's favorite black and white portrait from their engagement shoot. The irony cut deep. He stared at the phone as if it were a ticking bomb. One swipe, and the truth would either set him free or destroy him completely. That was when he remembered the call he'd overheard 2 nights before. Meghan whispering by the pool, her voice sharp, impatient. He'd thought it was work-related, something to do with her new project pitch. But now, as he stood in that quiet room, the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. Who was she talking to? Why did she sound afraid or guilty? He reached for the phone. His fingers hovered. But then he stopped. Because just then, he heard footsteps, hers. Meghan entered the room, radiant as ever, dressed in her soft beige robe, carrying her usual calm confidence. She didn't look startled. She didn't even ask why he was there. Instead, she smiled, but her eyes flickered, just for a second, to the pillow. And in that moment, Harry knew. The tension was electric. 2 people standing in the same room, pretending they didn't know what the other knew. A royal silence, filled with betrayal. Looking for something? She asked, voice casual, like nothing was wrong. Harry's throat felt dry. I heard a phone. Her smile didn't waver. Probably yours. You know you're always misplacing it. But Harry's was on the coffee table downstairs. She turned away, fixing her hair in the mirror, as if she could brush away the awkwardness. You're overthinking again, she said softly. You need to relax. Relax. That word landed like poison. Because for weeks, he'd been doing nothing but pretending to relax, pretending to believe her explanations, pretending not to notice the way she'd been withdrawing, pretending the rumors didn't sting. It wasn't until that night, after she went to bed, that he made the decision. He needed the truth. So he waited. When the house went quiet, Harry slipped back into the room. The phone was still there. And this time, he picked it up. The lock screen was simple. 4 digits. He tried her birthday. Denied. Their anniversary. Denied again. He hesitated, then typed in something else, the day they met. Unlocked. The first message hit him like a bullet. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Intimate, familiar, dangerous. Miss you already. Same place tomorrow. His breath hitched. He scrolled. There were photos, nothing explicit, but suggestive enough to leave no doubt. A hand on a shoulder. A half-smile. Meghan's necklace glinting in the corner of the frame. And the name. Saved as M.A. That was the moment the world inside him cracked. You see, for Harry, betrayal wasn't just about infidelity. It was about sacrifice. He'd burned bridges with his family, endured public humiliation, given up titles, money, security, all for love. And now, standing in his own home, staring at that screen, he realized love had turned into a weapon. He wanted to scream, to confront her. But something stopped him. Pride, maybe. Or disbelief. He needed proof. Something undeniable. The next morning, he called his head of security. Quietly. Privately. "I need to know where she's going," he said. "Don't tell anyone. Not even her assistant." Within days, the reports started coming in. Meghan's schedule wasn't adding up. Meetings that didn't exist. Trips without documentation. A private SUV that arrived at odd hours. And then came the footage. Security cameras from the Montecito gates caught her getting into a car late one night. The driver's face was obscured, but there was something about his posture, the way he reached for her hand. Harry froze watching it. For the next few hours, he sat in his study replaying the footage, frame by frame. And each time, the pit in his stomach grew heavier. Because whoever this man was, Meghan trusted him enough to risk everything. The emotional chaos inside him was indescribable, anger tangled with heartbreak, love battling hatred. He couldn't decide whether to confront her or collapse. And through it all, he remembered something his mother once told him. "The truth always comes out, Harry. It just hurts longer when you try to hide it." That night, as the wind rattled through the olive trees outside, he looked at Meghan sleeping peacefully beside him, serene, untouched, untouchable. And he whispered under his breath, "Who are you really?" Because deep down, he knew. This wasn't the woman he thought he married. This was someone else entirely. Someone who knew how to play the game. But what came next would make even that look like child's play. The next morning, Meghan disappeared for hours. No explanation. No text. No call. When she returned, she acted as if nothing had happened. But her perfume was different again. Harry's phone buzzed with a message from his security chief. Just one sentence. She wasn't alone. He didn't reply. He couldn't. His hands were shaking too hard. So he waited until she went upstairs. Then he went outside, to the very gate she'd been seen at. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly in the air, mixed with something else, the metallic smell of betrayal. And that's when he made the decision that would send shockwaves through Montecito. He wasn't going to confront her with words. He was going to confront her with evidence. Because if Meghan thought she could manipulate him like the press, she was about to learn. Harry had inherited more from his mother than just red hair and empathy. He'd inherited her quiet ruthlessness when betrayed. The stage was set. The trap was ready. And the truth was closing in. But what Harry didn't know, what no one knew, was that Meghan was already one step ahead. Because the moment he found that phone, she knew the walls were closing in. And what she did next would make the betrayal far more explosive than anyone ever imagined. The days were sunny, the gardens immaculate, the press releases glowing. Harry and Meghan posed for cameras, their smiles choreographed, their hands interlocked like the power couple they wanted the world to believe they still were. But behind those smiles, tension simmered, the kind that creeps in when love has turned into performance. Have you ever looked at two people and felt that they were pretending? That beneath the laughter, there was distance so thick it could choke a room? That was Harry and Meghan. It started with whispers. Staff noticed it first. The silence in the mornings, the way Meghan avoided Harry's gaze during breakfast, her new obsession with private work trips. She was always busy now, always taking calls or pitching new ideas. But no one ever knew exactly who she was calling or where she was going. Harry, on the other hand, tried to keep things normal. He'd wake up early, make breakfast for Archie and Lilibet, and check in with his team. But even his routine had changed. His smiles didn't reach his eyes anymore. He'd pause mid-sentence, lost in thought. And sometimes, he'd sit in the garden alone for hours, staring at the hills of Santa Barbara, as if trying to see something far beyond them. Was he remembering London? The palace? Or maybe the promises he'd made to Meghan, that they'd build something real, away from the chaos? But the truth was, Montecito had become a different kind of prison. The gates that once symbolized freedom now felt like barriers. The paparazzi still circled, but it wasn't the outside world closing in anymore. It was what was happening inside. Meghan's mood had shifted. Once affectionate and animated, she now seemed detached, restless. She'd vanish into her office for hours, lock the door, and emerge only when dinner was ready. If she came out at all, Harry tried to ignore it, tried to tell himself it was stress, ambition, the Hollywood grind. But deep down, something didn't add up. He noticed the little things first. The way she flinched when he reached for her phone. The sudden new passwords. The unfamiliar cologne scent that lingered on her clothes after her lunch meetings. He tried to reason with himself. She's just busy, he thought. She's building her career again. But love can make you foolish, and Harry, for all his military training and royal discipline, was still a man in love. Until one night, when everything cracked. It was late, close to midnight. The house was quiet. Meghan had told him she was going to meet a producer about a new documentary idea. But when Harry called her after 2 hours, she didn't pick up. 3 hours. 4. Nothing. He sat in the living room, the TV flickering silently, the clock ticking loud enough to echo in his chest. When he finally heard her car pull up, relief washed over him, followed immediately by suspicion. She entered the house with a smile, a little too bright, a little too late. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Just work. You know how it is." But something was off. Her voice trembled, barely. Her hair was slightly tousled. Her perfume, different again, a heavy, musky scent he'd never smelled before. He wanted to ask questions. He wanted to believe the answers. But that night, for the first time, he didn't reach for her hand when they went to bed. And she didn't seem to notice. The next morning, Meghan was already gone before sunrise. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "Meeting. Back later. Don't wait up." But Harry did wait. He waited for hours. When she finally returned that afternoon, she looked radiant, too radiant. Dressed to perfection, glowing, distracted. "Good meeting?" he asked. She smiled. "Productive." That was all. That's when Harry realized something had changed forever. He confided in a close friend, one of the few people he still trusted from his royal circle. "I think she's hiding something," he admitted. "But I don't want to believe it." The friend didn't mince words. "If you have doubts, you probably have reasons." Those words haunted him. He tried to shake it off, tried to drown himself in work. But the house began to feel colder. Conversations shorter. Eye contact rarer. And then, one evening, he walked past Meghan's office and heard her whispering. Her tone soft, intimate, not the way she talked to colleagues. He stopped outside the door, frozen. She laughed, a kind of laugh he hadn't heard in months. And then, a pause. A sigh. Harry's chest tightened. He wanted to walk in, but something inside him, pride, fear, maybe both, kept him rooted to the spot. When she emerged, she looked startled to see him there. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked. "Long enough," he replied. A tense silence. She forced a smile. "You're being paranoid again." Paranoid. That word echoed in his mind like a curse. Because that's exactly what everyone said to him before, when he questioned the media, when he challenged the palace, when he spoke about Diana. "You're paranoid, Harry." But paranoia doesn't mean you're wrong. Sometimes, it's just your instincts screaming to be heard. The following week, he began noticing the security reports. Cars coming in and out of the property at odd hours. Unknown visitors. A black SUV that appeared 3 nights in a row near the private entrance. When Harry asked his head of security, the man hesitated. "Sir? I wasn't sure if I should tell you." "Tell me what?" "There's someone she's been meeting. Off-site." Discreetly. Harry's stomach dropped. "Who?" The guard hesitated again. "We're not sure yet. But it's the same car every time." And just like that, the illusion shattered. For days after that, Harry barely spoke. He moved through the house like a ghost, polite but distant. Meghan, meanwhile, carried on as if nothing was wrong. Filming, networking, smiling for cameras. The tension between them became palpable. At dinner, their conversation was mechanical. In public, they played their roles. Behind closed doors, silence. You could feel the air thick with resentment and denial. Two people who once couldn't stand to be apart now couldn't stand to be alone together. Even Archie noticed. "Why are you sad, Daddy?" he asked one evening. Harry smiled weakly. "I'm not sad, buddy." But he was. Sad. Angry. Betrayed. He began spending more time in the garden, pacing the same path his mother once loved, finding comfort in solitude. And every night, when he walked past the guest room, he couldn't help but glance at that silk pillow. The second phone was gone. And that could only mean one thing, Meghan knew, which meant the game had begun. From that moment on, every interaction between them became a performance within a performance. Meghan, calm and composed, her every move rehearsed. Harry, cautious, quietly gathering evidence, trying to stay one step ahead. Because the truth wasn't just coming. It was already here, creeping through the cracks of their perfect life. And the moment it broke through, it would blow the entire facade apart. The storm hadn't hit yet, but the air was electric with warning. Harry could feel it in his chest. Meghan could feel it too. And soon, the entire world would. Because one night later, a stranger's car pulled up outside the Montecito gates again. And this time, Harry was the one watching. But what he saw that night would make his heart stop cold. It wasn't the first time Harry had doubted his wife. But this was different. Because now he had proof. Not just rumors. Not whispers. Cold, physical evidence that his instincts had been right all along. It happened on a Tuesday night. Meghan had gone out for what she described as a late dinner with a brand consultant. The term sounded vague, deliberately so. Harry didn't argue. Not anymore. He just nodded, said, "Okay," and watched her leave. But the moment her car disappeared through the gates, the silence that filled the house felt unbearable. It wasn't peace. It was tension, coiled like a wire ready to snap. That's when he saw it again, the faint light from the guest bedroom. That cursed glow from under the pillow. He froze. His pulse began to race. His instincts screamed at him to look away, to walk out, to pretend nothing was wrong. But he couldn't. Because this time, the phone wasn't just buzzing. It was ringing. And the name flashing on the screen made his blood run cold. M.A. He picked it up slowly, almost afraid of the weight it carried. The ringtone echoed in the room. A familiar melody Meghan used for personal calls, one he hadn't heard in weeks. He didn't answer it. He let it ring, once, twice, 3 times, until it stopped. He waited. Then the notification light blinked again, a text. He opened it. "Same time tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about you." The message felt like a knife through his chest. Harry's hand trembled as he scrolled up. The previous messages painted a story, one he didn't want to read, but couldn't look away from. Hidden meetups, inside jokes, references to secret places, and emojis that weren't meant for friends. One message stood out. "You make me feel alive again. He'll never understand us. He'll never understand us." Harry dropped the phone. The sound echoed through the empty room. For a moment, he just stood there, staring into nothing. How do you process something like that? When the person you gave your entire life to, the person you defended against the entire world, betrays you in your own home. He felt like the floor beneath him had disappeared. He picked the phone back up, scrolling further. The conversations stretched back weeks. There were deleted messages too, gaps in the thread where entire days had been wiped clean. But the remaining ones told enough of the story. There were photos. Blurry, close-up, intimate. Meghan's hand on someone's chest. A wine glass in the corner. A caption that read, "Wish you were here again." His breathing became shallow. His vision blurred. And then came the audio clip. Just a few seconds long. Meghan's voice, soft, whispering. "You make it worth it." Worth what? Worth the risk? Worth the deception? Harry slammed the phone down and stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the dresser. He'd faced soldiers in Afghanistan. He'd faced the fury of the British tabloids. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to this. Because this wasn't an enemy. This was his wife. He left the room, barely able to breathe, and walked out to the balcony overlooking the dark gardens. The air was cool, the ocean faintly visible in the distance. But all he could feel was heat, burning inside him. Rage, hurt, confusion. He thought about Diana, about the way she'd been betrayed, the way she'd suffered in silence. Was history repeating itself? Was he doomed to the same heartbreak she endured? His phone buzzed. A message from his head of security. "Sir, we reviewed the gate cameras again. The same car returned tonight. Female passenger in matching Mrs. Sussex's profile entered between 10:47 and 10:52 p.m. Driver unidentified." Harry's heart pounded in his ears. He typed back, "Record everything. Keep it quiet." Then he turned his gaze back toward the horizon, whispering to himself, "I just need to know who." The next morning, Meghan acted as though nothing had happened. She hummed softly while making coffee, smiling faintly at the children, her every gesture smooth and composed. Harry watched her from across the kitchen, his expression unreadable. "You were out late," he said casually. She glanced up. "Yeah, meetings ran long. LA traffic was insane." He nodded. "Anyone I'd know?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough for him to notice. "Just industry people." "Uh-huh." He looked down at his coffee, pretending not to care. But inside, the words from the text burned like acid. "He'll never understand us." That phrase wouldn't leave his mind. Later that day, while Meghan went for her so-called studio call, Harry met with his chief of security in the study. "What did you find?" he asked, voice low. The guard placed a small flash drive on the table. "You should see this, sir. It's delicate." Harry inserted it into his laptop. The footage appeared grainy but clear enough. There she was, Meghan, dressed in black, slipping out through the side gate. The same black SUV waiting for her. The man driving it, tall, dark-haired, wearing sunglasses despite the night. He opened the door for her, hand resting gently on her back as she entered. Harry clenched his jaw so hard it ached. The footage cut off there, but it was enough. Enough to confirm what his heart already knew. He sat in silence for a long time. Then he said quietly, "Give me everything you can about that car." "Yes, sir." As the door closed behind the guard, Harry leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Every image of their past together replayed in his mind. The wedding, the interviews, the promises. He had believed in their story. He had believed in her. But now, that belief had become his biggest mistake. That evening, Meghan returned home, humming again, as if her life was perfectly normal. Harry watched her walk past him, her perfume drifting through the air like a taunt. He almost confronted her. Almost. But then he stopped, because he realized, if she could lie this well, he needed to be smarter. So he decided to wait. Watch. Collect. He began studying her patterns, where she went, who she met, how long she stayed. He noted every discrepancy, every odd coincidence. The woman he thought he knew suddenly became a mystery he couldn't solve. At night, he replayed the phone messages in his mind, each one more haunting than the last. "You make me feel alive again." Had he killed her joy? Had fame? Or had she simply found someone else who gave her what he couldn't? It didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. And yet, part of him still wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone else was using her name. Maybe the texts were innocent. Maybe he was wrong. But then came the final blow. A few days later, while Meghan was showering, another message came through on that hidden phone. This one was different. Longer. "Last night was perfect. I still can't believe you took the risk. Tell him whatever you need to. I'll be waiting." Harry's entire body went numb. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the phone still glowing in his hands. "Whatever you need to tell him." That line confirmed everything. He looked toward the bathroom door, the sound of water running behind it. He could see her silhouette faintly through the frosted glass. For a brief second, he imagined confronting her right then, walking in, phone in hand, demanding answers. But then he realized it wasn't time yet. Not until he had every detail, every piece of truth she thought she could hide. So instead, he placed the phone back under the pillow, exactly where he found it. And when she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, he smiled. Calm, controlled, empty. "Everything okay?" she asked, pretending not to notice the tension. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Everything's fine." She smiled back, unaware that he had already seen everything he needed to. Because now, Harry had the truth, and the truth had set something inside him ablaze. He wasn't the naive prince anymore. He wasn't the helpless husband. He was a man betrayed, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. But little did he know, Meghan was about to make her boldest move yet, one that would push him past the point of no return. And when that moment came, not even Montecito's high walls could contain what was about to unfold. That was the night when all doubts turned into a devastating reality. It began like any other quiet evening in the Sussex household. The California sky was painted in shades of gold and violet as the sun dipped behind the Santa Ynez Mountains. Harry was sitting in his study, the faint hum of the ocean breeze slipping through the open window. But there was nothing peaceful about the man behind that desk. His mind was at war. For days, he had been waiting, watching, collecting evidence like a soldier gathering intel behind enemy lines. But tonight, something felt different. The air was thick, charged, the kind of stillness that comes before an explosion. At 9:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. A message from his head of security. "She's on the move." Harry's heartbeat quickened. He stood up slowly, walked to the window, and looked down toward the driveway. Through the shadows of the olive trees, he could see the faint gleam of headlights approaching the rear exit gate, the private one, far from public view. The black SUV. Again, he clenched his fists. "Not tonight," he whispered. He moved quickly, grabbing a jacket and signaling one of the security men stationed nearby. "Follow me." Quietly, they slipped out through the side entrance, their footsteps muffled on the gravel path. The air was cool, and the night felt almost too calm, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. From a distance, Harry watched Meghan approach the SUV. She wore a long trench coat, her hair loose, her expression unreadable. She glanced over her shoulder once, not toward the cameras, not toward the house, but toward the shadows. Harry ducked instinctively. The driver stepped out. Tall, lean, with the kind of confidence that made Harry's skin crawl. He opened the car door for her, his movements too familiar, too comfortable. And then Harry saw it, the gesture that broke him. The man reached out, his hand brushing the small of Meghan's back as she smiled. That small, intimate smile, the same one Harry once thought was just for him. For a moment, time stopped. Every memory, every promise, every whispered, "I love you," all of it shattered like glass in his mind. He wanted to rush forward, to pull her away, to demand an explanation. But something in him, a strange, cold calm, told him to stay still, to watch, to see how far it would go. The SUV's headlights flickered as the car began to pull away. "Track it," Harry said sharply. His security man nodded, speaking quietly into his earpiece. "Copy that." Drone surveillance activated. Harry stood there in the darkness, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. And then, slowly, he turned back toward the mansion, the home that now felt like a stranger's house. He walked inside, each step echoing on the marble floor. The walls seemed to close in around him. The photos on the wall, their engagement, the Oprah interview, their first Christmas in California, all looked like relics of a life that had never really existed. He poured himself a drink, his hands trembling. Scotch, neat. The first sip burned, but he didn't care. He needed something to drown the shaking. Minutes turned into hours. The house remained quiet, empty. At 11:58 p.m., another message appeared on his phone. "She's back. Entered property through West Gate. Alone. Alone." That word was supposed to comfort him. It didn't. He walked to the window again, watching as Meghan's silhouette appeared at the gate. She moved with her usual grace, like nothing had happened. No guilt, no fear, just calm composure. She entered the house softly, removing her coat, humming faintly. Harry didn't move. He just watched. Finally, she noticed him. "Oh, you're still up?" she said casually, her voice smooth. "Yeah," he replied, his tone flat. "Couldn't sleep." She smiled faintly, setting her purse down. "You should try? You've been working too hard lately." He said nothing, just studied her face, searching for a trace of guilt, anything. But she was unreadable. Then she noticed something, the small red light blinking on the security monitor. "What's that?" she asked. Harry didn't answer. He stepped closer, his voice low. "You tell me." She blinked, confused, or pretending to be. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The gate camera picked you up again tonight," he said quietly. "Same car. Same time. Same person." Her face froze. For the briefest moment, her expression faltered, and that was all the confirmation he needed. She tried to recover. "Harry, you're being paranoid again." "Stop," he cut in. His voice was calm, but cold enough to make the air heavy. "Don't do that. Not tonight." Silence. He placed his phone on the table. On the screen was a still image from the security feed. Meghan, standing by the SUV, her hand on the man's shoulder. Her eyes flickered. "That's not what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is," Harry said. She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, but it was long enough. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "You know, I gave up everything for you. Everything. My family, my home, my title, my peace. I believed in you. And now, don't twist this," she said sharply, her tone shifting. "You've been distant for months. You think watching me through cameras makes you right. This isn't about cameras," he snapped. "It's about trust." She laughed, bitterly. "Trust? You mean control. You've always wanted control, Harry. Admit it." He stared at her, stunned. "Control? You're the one sneaking out in the middle of the night. And you're the one spying on me, she fired back. What does that say about us? The room pulsed with silence. Harry looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman who once made him feel alive now felt like a ghost wearing her face. Finally, he said, just tell me the truth. Who is he? She looked away. You don't want to know. That sentence landed like a gunshot. He took a step back. You're right, he said quietly. I don't. He turned toward the door, but before leaving, he added, you can keep your secrets, Meghan, but not under this roof. He walked out, leaving her standing there, motionless, expression blank. That night, Harry didn't sleep. He sat outside under the stars, the Pacific wind whipping through the trees, his mind spiraling. He thought about everything. The woman he loved, the empire they tried to build, the world watching them fall apart piece by piece. But he also thought about something else, dignity. Because if she wouldn't tell the truth, he'd find it himself. At dawn, his phone buzzed one last time. A message from his head of security. Sir, we identified the man. Former producer. Worked with Mrs. Sussex on the Archetypes project. Harry stared at the message for a long time, his face expressionless. Then he whispered, of course it was. He stood up, walked back into the house, and looked around the grand, empty rooms. All the luxury, all the fame, all the noise, none of it mattered now. Because the one thing he thought he could never lose was already gone. But what came next would make this discovery look small. Because when Harry finally confronted Meghan face to face, she didn't deny it. She doubled down, and her next words would send him over the edge. It was the moment that turned heartbreak into fury, disbelief into resolve. Harry had the footage, the evidence, the text messages. Everything pointed to one conclusion. But it wasn't until he finally learned the name that the entire illusion of their marriage collapsed like glass. He hadn't slept in days. The mansion was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He'd gone through every emotion possible, rage, sadness, numbness, denial, until only one thing remained, the need to know. Who was he? Who was the man Meghan had risked everything for? Her marriage, her image, the royal brand she had fought so hard to control. The answer came early one morning, when Harry's security chief arrived with a sealed folder. His face said everything before he even opened his mouth. Sir, the man said, voice low, we identified him. Harry took the folder. He hesitated for a moment, as if opening it would make everything real. And then he flipped it open. A photograph. A man in his 40s. Polished. Confident. Too familiar. Harry's stomach dropped. He knew that face. Marcus Anderson. The security chief said quietly. The name hit like thunder. Marcus, the Soho House executive. Meghan's longtime friend. The man who had introduced her to half of Hollywood. The man she had once described as her rock, her spiritual twin. The same man who had been at their wedding, who had stood by them during the chaos of Megxit. Harry's hands tightened around the folder. You're sure? Yes, sir. We cross-checked his license plate, phone records, and recent sightings. He's been in Santa Barbara multiple times this month. Always near here. Harry closed his eyes. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. Of course it's him. Because in hindsight, it made perfect sense. Marcus had always been around. Always too close. Always too charming. Harry had dismissed it before. He'd believed the stories about their friendship, the late-night strategy talks, the business meetings. He had even thanked Marcus once for looking out for her. And now, that gratitude made him sick. He walked to the window, staring out at the garden where Meghan often filmed her home lifestyle clips for social media. The same garden where Marcus had once stood, sipping wine and laughing with her, while Harry attended to calls inside. The memory burned like acid. He turned to his security chief. Did anyone else know? The man hesitated. Some of the staff suspected something, sir. But no one said a word. Harry nodded slowly. Right. Because she made them sign NDAs. The realization hit him like a second betrayal. Meghan hadn't just been hiding from him. She'd been protecting herself legally from everyone else. Every staff member, every contractor, every assistant, all bound to silence. She'd built a fortress of secrecy right under his nose. And he, the son of Diana, the man raised to distrust the press and guard his privacy, had fallen for it completely. That afternoon, Meghan returned home. She looked radiant, as always, glowing skin, designer dress, that perfect practice smile. Harry was waiting for her in the living room, the folder in his hand. Can we talk? He said evenly. She hesitated. Now. Now. She set her purse down slowly. Okay. He handed her the folder. She looked at it, then up at him. What's this? You tell me, he said. She opened it. The photo slid out. For the briefest second, her eyes widened, just a flicker, before she caught herself. Where did you get this? She asked. Does it matter? Silence. You've been following me, she said quietly. Harry's jaw tightened. I had to. Because you've been lying to me. Her voice softened. It's not what you think. He laughed bitterly. Then explain it to me, Meghan. Explain the late nights. The secret phone. The messages. The footage. The man you said was just a friend. She didn't answer. He stepped closer. Tell me it's not true. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't do this. She finally looked up, and instead of guilt, there was defiance. You don't understand, she said. Then make me understand, he snapped. She sighed, setting the folder down. Marcus was there for me when you weren't. When you were drowning in your past, shutting me out, avoiding real conversations. He listened. Harry blinked in disbelief. Listened? You're seriously justifying this. Her tone sharpened. You think you're perfect? You think you've been easy to live with? You're obsessed with proving everyone wrong, with defending yourself, with being the victim. You left the royal family, but you still act like one. Entitled, guarded, paranoid. Harry's voice dropped to a whisper. So that gives you the right to betray me? She didn't flinch. Maybe it gave me the right to feel alive again. That line cut through him like a blade. He stared at her, searching for remorse, but there was none. Just calm, cold honesty. Finally, he said, you could have told me you were unhappy. I tried, she said quietly. But you were too busy trying to fix everything. Your image, your pain, the world. You never noticed I was slipping away. He laughed, a hollow, broken sound. So you found someone else to notice you. Her silence was her answer. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. You know what the worst part is? He said finally. It's not even that you cheated. It's that you did it with someone who stood in our wedding photos. That hit her. She looked away. You humiliated me, he continued. Not just as your husband, but as a man who defended you when no one else would. I cut off my family for you. I turned my back on everything I knew because I believed in you. And this is how you repay that. Her voice trembled slightly. You're not innocent either. He spun around. What does that mean? You've been emotionally gone for months, she shot back. You think sitting in silence, avoiding me, pretending everything's fine, that's not betrayal in its own way? Don't twist this, he warned. Maybe if you'd been present, Marcus wouldn't have been. That was it. The line that broke him completely. He stood there for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Then he said, quietly but firmly, get out. Meghan's eyes widened. What? You heard me. Get out. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. Take your things and go. For a second, she looked shaken, but then her mask of calm returned. You'll regret this, she said softly. Maybe, he replied, but not as much as I regret meeting you. She stared at him for a long moment. No tears, no apology, just silence. Then she turned and walked upstairs. Harry stood there, frozen, listening to her footsteps fade. A few minutes later, the sound of a door slamming echoed through the mansion. He didn't move. He just stared at the empty staircase, the air thick with betrayal. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across the floor. And in that dim light, he realized the truth. The life he'd built in Montecito was already over. But the worst was still to come. Because while Meghan may have left that room, she hadn't left the house, not yet. And when she did, it wouldn't be quietly. She was about to fight back, and she was going to do it her way. That was the night everything finally erupted. The calm before the explosion gone, the masks ripped away, the love story reduced to ash. The truth was no longer hidden behind polite smiles or PR statements. It was raw, unfiltered, and about to tear apart the last thread of whatever was left between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It started with silence again. That same oppressive, suffocating silence that had haunted the Montecito mansion for weeks. But this time, it wasn't just awkward, it was dangerous. There was tension in the air so thick, even the staff avoided crossing paths with either of them. Meghan had spent most of the day in her office, locked away. Calls, emails, the occasional burst of laughter that didn't sound quite real. Harry, meanwhile, stayed in his study. No meetings, no phone calls, just pacing, waiting for her to come out, knowing that when she did, there would be no turning back. As the California sun began to dip behind the hills, the house dimmed into twilight. That was when she finally appeared, calm, composed, and defiant. He met her in the living room. The folder with Marcus Anderson's photo still sat on the table between them, like an open wound that refused to close. Harry didn't speak at first. He just looked at her, studied her. She was flawless, as always, but her eyes betrayed something new. Fear? Guilt? Or was it calculation? Finally, he said quietly, "Why are you still here?" Meghan crossed her arms. "Because I live here." "You shouldn't," he replied coldly. "You've made that clear." She gave a short laugh, but it was humorless. "You think it's that simple? You think you can just tell me to leave and I'll disappear?" Harry's jaw tightened. "You already disappeared, long before I asked you to go." That one landed. Her smirk faltered. She glanced at the folder, then back at him. "You think this changes anything? You think running to your security team like a scared little boy fixes the mess you've made of this marriage?" He stepped forward. "The mess I made? Meghan, you were sneaking around behind my back with a man who stood beside us at our wedding. Don't you dare turn this around." She didn't flinch. "You were never really here, Harry. Not for me, not for the kids. You've been living in your mother's shadow, trying to avenge ghosts that no one can save." "Don't bring my mother into this," he said, voice shaking. "Why not? She's in everything you do," she shot back. "Every interview, every decision. You talk about protecting your family, but you don't even know how to be one." He froze. The cruelty in her words hit him like a physical blow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ticking of the antique clock filled the silence, marking each passing second like a countdown to disaster. Finally, Harry said quietly, "You've become cruel." "And you've become weak," she replied. That was it. The line. The spark. Harry slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "I gave up everything for you. My home, my family, my country. And this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in my own house." Meghan's voice rose to match his. "You didn't give up anything, Harry. You ran away. You ran because you couldn't handle the pressure, and I had to carry the weight of it all. Your past, your guilt, your constant self-pity." He stepped closer. "You're unbelievable." She met his stare, unblinking. "No, I'm real. Maybe for the first time in years." The fury in his eyes softened for a fraction of a second, because beneath her words, there was something true. They'd both been living in a fantasy, clinging to a version of themselves that no longer existed. But that moment of reflection vanished the second she said his name again, not with love, but with venom. "Harry, you can play the victim all you want, but you chose this life. You chose to leave your family. You chose to burn bridges. You chose me. Don't hate me because you finally regret it." He laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Regret it? Meghan, I regret trusting you." Something in her expression cracked then. The cool exterior faltered, just for a moment. "You have no idea what it's like to live under constant judgment," she said, voice trembling. "You have your titles, your sympathy. I had to fight for every ounce of respect, every headline, every piece of control." He stared at her. "Control. That's what this was always about for you, wasn't it?" Her silence was answer enough. He took a deep breath, his voice low but cutting. "You wanted to be a queen, Meghan, not a wife." She turned away, her hands shaking slightly. "Maybe I wanted to be seen. Is that so terrible?" "No," he said softly. "But betraying someone who loved you just to feel seen, that is." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid: love, anger, grief, and something far darker. Resentment. Then Meghan's tone shifted. "Come again. Calculated. You think this is the end of me? You think you can throw me out, and I'll just vanish into the background?" Harry didn't reply. She took a step closer, her voice cold. "You forget who I am, Harry. I built this image. I know how to control the narrative. You may have the truth, but I have the spotlight." That sent a chill down his spine. "So that's what this is about," he said quietly. "Power. It's always been about power," she whispered. "You just didn't realize I had more of it." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for his phone. "Not anymore." Her brow furrowed. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. He pressed play on a video, the footage from the security camera, the one from the Montecito gate. Her face went pale as her own image appeared on the screen. "Stop," she said sharply. He didn't. Harry, stop. He turned the volume up. The faint sound of her voice, laughing, whispering, filled the room. Finally, she lunged forward and grabbed the phone from his hand, slamming it on the table. You have no right. I have every right, he roared. You did this in my home, with my children sleeping upstairs. The rage in his voice cracked something inside her. For the first time, she looked shaken, vulnerable. Please, she whispered, her tone changing completely. Let's not do this here. Where then? He asked bitterly. Where do you want to destroy me next? On Netflix? In your next interview? Tears welled in her eyes, but they never fell. You don't understand what it's like. Oh, I understand perfectly, he interrupted. You didn't marry me for love. You married me for leverage. That line hit her like a slap. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For a long moment, the two just stood there, the prince and the actress, staring at the ruins of what they had built together. Then, quietly, Harry said, It's over. Meghan's voice dropped to a whisper. You'll regret this. He met her eyes. I already do. With that, he turned and walked out of the room. The door closed behind him with a slow, heavy click, the kind of sound that feels final. Meghan stood there, breathing unevenly, staring at the broken phone on the table, the folder on the floor, and the video still playing on the dark screen. Her reflection stared back at her, flawless, composed, untouchable. But for the first time, she didn't believe it. And yet, even as tears threatened to fall, she wiped them away and whispered to herself, He doesn't know who he's dealing with. Because in her mind, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of war, and the next move would be hers. That was the night the house stopped being a home and turned into a battleground. The Montecito estate, the same sprawling mansion that once symbolized freedom, love, and privacy, suddenly became a scene of quiet chaos. The confrontation had broken something irreparable, and everyone in that house felt it. It was past midnight. The air outside was still, but inside, it was suffocating. After Harry walked out, Meghan stood in the living room, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Not of the narrative, not of her image, not even of the space around her. Harry had gone straight to his study. He didn't shout. He didn't throw things. He didn't call anyone. Not yet. He just sat at his desk, staring at the flickering security monitors, watching the silent footage of his wife walking away from that black SUV over and over again. It didn't look real anymore. It looked like a movie, one where he was the fool in love, and she was the actress who played him perfectly. Finally, he picked up the phone and called his head of security. Lock the property, he said, his voice calm but deadly serious. No one leaves, no one enters. Until I say so. The guard on the other end hesitated. Sir, that includes Mrs. Sussex? Harry's tone didn't waver. Especially her. Within minutes, the entire Montecito compound went into silent lockdown. The main gate sealed shut. Motion sensors activated. Extra guards positioned along the perimeter. The staff, startled by the sudden command, exchanged uneasy glances. They'd never seen Harry like this before, composed, decisive, but radiating heartbreak like heat. Meanwhile, Meghan was upstairs, pacing her bedroom. She could hear faint movement outside, footsteps, muffled radio chatter, the sound of locks engaging. She pulled the curtain back and saw two guards standing by the driveway. Her pulse quickened. He didn't, she whispered to herself. But he had. She stormed downstairs, her robes sweeping behind her, fury blazing in her eyes. Harry, she shouted, her voice echoing through the hall. What is this? What are you doing? He didn't look up from the desk. He was still staring at the monitors. Harry, finally, he turned to her, his eyes cold, detached. Security protocol. Standard procedure. For what? She demanded. You think you can trap me here? He stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. I'm not trapping you. I'm protecting myself and the kids. The kids? She repeated, her tone incredulous. Don't you dare use them to justify this. I'm not using them, he said quietly. I'm protecting them from the circus you're about to unleash. She blinked, stunned. You really think I'd hurt my own children? He didn't answer immediately. Then, in a low voice, he said, I think you'd hurt anyone to protect your image. That sentence landed like a slap. Her face went pale, but only for a second. Then she straightened, her composure snapping back like armor. You've lost your mind, she said. You can't just lock me in here like a criminal. He tilted his head slightly. Then stop acting like one. Her jaw clenched. This is abuse, Harry. You're going to regret this. He met her gaze, unflinching. You keep saying that. But I think for once, I'm doing the right thing. She laughed bitterly. The right thing? You mean your version of right? The one where you play the victim and everyone else is the villain? No, he said softly. This time, I'm just tired of being blind. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a voice came through Harry's intercom. Sir, all access points secured. Meghan's eyes widened. You're seriously doing this? Go upstairs, he said quietly. Pack your things. I'm not going anywhere, she snapped. You don't have that kind of authority over me. He stepped closer, his voice steady. You're right. I don't have authority over you. But I have control over this property, and I'm not letting you walk out and spin this before I can tell the truth. She narrowed her eyes. So that's what this is about. You're afraid I'll talk. He didn't answer. She smirked. You forget who I am, Harry. The moment I walk out that door, the world listens to me, not you. That's exactly why you're not walking out, he said. For the first time, she seemed genuinely rattled. You can't silence me. I'm not trying to silence you, he said softly. I'm trying to stop you from turning this into another performance. She stared at him, stunned. For a brief moment, there was silence again, thick, unbearable silence. Then she spoke, her voice low and venomous. If you think you can stop me, you've already lost. She turned to storm off, but the sound of the deadbolt clicking on the front door stopped her cold. She spun around, her face pale. What are you doing? She hissed. Harry didn't move. I told you, the house is in lockdown. You can't do this, she shouted. You can't keep me prisoner. I'm not keeping you prisoner, he said. I'm keeping the truth contained, until I decide how to handle it. Meghan's eyes blazed. You've gone mad. He met her gaze calmly. Maybe. Or maybe I've finally stopped pretending everything's fine. She laughed. Sharp and bitter. You really think this will make people side with you? You're locking your wife in a mansion, Harry. Do you know what that'll look like when it gets out? He smiled faintly. It won't get out. Not yet. Her jaw tightened. You think you can control me, but you can't. The moment I walk out of here, the story will be mine. And the world will believe me. They always have. That's the thing, he said quietly. The world's starting to see through you. Her eyes flickered. A brief crack in her armor. You're bluffing. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Am I? Because while you've been busy manipulating headlines, I've been talking to people. Real people. Ones who've seen what's really going on. Her breath caught. What are you saying? He leaned in. I'm saying your version of the story isn't the only one anymore. Her composure slipped again, just slightly, and that was all it took for Harry to realize he'd finally taken back control. The room went still. For the first time in years, Harry didn't feel powerless. He wasn't the husband chasing a dream anymore. He wasn't the runaway prince trying to prove his worth. He was a man who'd finally seen the truth, and it was ugly. Meghan turned and stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind her. Harry exhaled, sinking into the nearest chair. His hands trembled slightly, but his expression stayed calm. Outside, the guards held their positions. The gates stayed shut. The Montecito mansion, once a sanctuary, now stood silent and sealed, like a castle under siege. But the lockdown wasn't just physical. It was emotional, symbolic. Harry had built these walls to keep the world out, and now they were keeping the truth in. He knew this wasn't the end. She would strike back. She always did. But for the first time, he was ready. Because this time, Meghan wasn't just fighting for her image. She was fighting to survive the fallout. And what she did next would turn the entire scandal into a public war no one could stop. That it began with a silence that didn't belong to any house. Not to a home, not to a sanctuary, not to the coastal estate that once promised a new life. It was the silence of a stage between acts, the brief breath where the audience leans forward and the actors decide whether to destroy each other or save the scene. After the lockdown, after the broken words and the sealed gates, Serena stood in the master bedroom and stared at her reflection as if waiting for the mirror to apologize. It didn't. It never does. Do you know that split second when pride outruns pain? When instead of crying, you plan. That's where she lived now, right at the edge between humiliation and strategy. She could feel the humiliation gnawing at the edges of her composure, but strategy had always been louder in her life. Strategy had rescued her from obscurity, carried her across rooms full of important people, taught her which tone to use, which story to tell, which tear to permit. And tonight, strategy whispered something ruthless. Turn this. The robe slipped from her shoulders. She dressed deliberately, clean lines, neutral hues, an armor of silk and understatement. She didn't need sparkle for this. She needed precision. She needed control. She slipped into her office, her real sanctuary, closed the door, and powered on the tower of devices waiting like loyal soldiers. One phone, then the second, then the laptop reserved for private exchanges, then the tablet that was never connected to the estate network. You don't think she anticipated a day like this, did you? Because Serena did. She believed in beauty, but she always prepared for disaster. Her fingers typed fast, no hesitation. An encrypted thread sprang to life. Status? The reply came within seconds, like a heartbeat returning to a shocked body. Online. Quiet check says property is sealed. Cameras are on loop for exterior, per Plan B. Plan B. The phrase steadied her pulse. Months ago, on a night suspiciously similar to this one, that same taste of inevitability in the air, Serena had asked for a failsafe. Not to run, not to hide, to frame, to shape. If the story ever turned, she would not let someone else write it first. Another message flashed, media contact on standby. Ready when you are. She replied, not yet. Test the leaks. Small truth, louder implication. I'll feed lines. Then she opened a folder labeled simply, Seams. That was what she called the private archive of Alex's life with her. The fragile seams that could be tugged if the public's sympathy drifted. Late-night recordings of arguments where his voice sounded raw, not cruel, but the microphone doesn't know the difference. Photos where he was turned away from the camera, exhausted, grieving things larger than either of them. A screenshot of a therapy appointment reminder. 2 texts that, isolated, looked like a husband refusing presents, when really he'd just asked for an hour to breathe. None of it was a lie. But proximity to truth can make a shadow look like a monster. She pulled 3 pieces. She wasn't going to drop them. Not yet. She was going to tease them into existence, like smoke under a closed door. Serena's next move wasn't to post. It was to call. Her publicist answered on the second ring, voice clipped with caffeine and experience. Tell me. He locked down the property, Serena said, keeping her voice quiet, tremulous, but only enough to sound human. He says it's about safety. It's about containment. A breath. Is he violent? No. She knew better than to play that card without proof. Besides, Alex had never raised a hand to her. That was the curse of this moment. His restraint made him harder to defeat. But he's angry, and he's decided he's the only one allowed to speak. Then your job, the publicist said softly, is to let the world wonder why. Not with accusations, Serena agreed. With questions. Questions travel faster. They always do. A statement can be disproved. A question multiplies. Serena ended the call and opened a new window labeled Drafts. She typed a single sentence and stared at it until it took her side. After everything I've done to protect our family, to be told I'm the problem. Is this what love looks like? Not a claim. A wound. The internet adores a wound, especially one offered by someone who has learned how to bleed photogenically. She didn't send it. Not yet. She saved it, because timing is oxygen, and she wanted Alex to feel the room thin before she let herself inhale. Downstairs, in his study, Alex was feeling it. He sat still, almost frighteningly still, with the screens washing his face in pale light. His head of security had checked in again, gates secured, perimeter quiet, crews rotated. The protocols worked like a metronome, but grief doesn't follow rhythms. It hits like a wrong note that keeps ringing. How do you protect yourself from the person who taught you to let your guard down? How do you act like a prince when you can't stop feeling like a child left at a gate that never opens? He closed his eyes and remembered the vows. Then he opened them and remembered the second phone. Both were true. That contradiction is what breaks a man. He told himself he had done the right thing. He had set a boundary, taken control, prevented a spectacle. He had to believe that. He wanted to believe that. But even the right thing can feel like cruelty when love is still warm. A soft knock at his door. Mr. Albright? The security chief said, invoking the surname Alex used when he wanted to disappear from headlines. There's movement upstairs, office wing. Systems show separate network traffic. Of course there was. Serena never ran through the front door when a side window could also lead to the street. Monitor, Alex said. Don't interfere. Not yet. Not yet. He didn't want this to escalate. He wanted to see what she would do when she thought the house was asleep.